Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Before I begin the introductions, I need to recognize somebody very special, and I'd ask you to hold your applause until you hear my cue. This person, who was too humble to even introduce himself, accompanying Adam, is none other than our fearless chairman, Derek Brown, who's here tonight with his amazing, who's here tonight with his amazing wife, Emily, at the Keller table, and has not only brought our Utah State Party out of debt, helped us win local, state, and crucial federal congressional races. He's increased the strength and reputation of our state party nationally, and he and his team at home and at the state GOP deserve a huge round of applause. Please join me, Chairman Derek Brown. Thank you so much, Derek. Proud of that guy, my former law partner. Love you, brother. The chairman has kindly allowed me the honor of introducing two men that I admire greatly. Our host, Senator Mike Lee, and his special guest and our keynote speaker, Ambassador Robert C. O'Brien. Following the keynote, we will hear a discussion between the two. Both of these men embody action, faith, family, substance, and the most noble ideals of public service. I'll forego any formal reading of Senator Lee's impressive resume. It is pages long, trust me. But let me say this, when it comes to the senator, his intellect, his tenacity, his commitment to principle and the Constitution are widely known. What might not be apparent to all is his humor, humanitarian heart, and ability to bridge divides. Our senior senator, while popular here at home, is also extremely well-liked and effective in D.C., a hard place to be effective. He's built coalitions across the aisle while remaining true to our principles as he led out nationally promoting social capital, criminal justice reform, fiscal discipline, and protecting personal privacy. In these areas, he has worked closely with Ambassador O'Brien. Both men prefer to avoid the spotlight and just get things done behind the scenes. They put people over politics and principle over mere popularity. Both have stood with us to fight the opioid epidemic, teen vaping, suicide, child pornography, and other abuses. They've worked to activate national resources for mental and behavioral health challenges like the new 9-8 number that is the new 911 for mental and behavioral crises, and they have stopped many, many more threats, foreign and domestic. Both have been warriors in the fight against human trafficking. And let me share something personal with you. Last fall, they each played a pivotal role in helping liberate more than a dozen Venezuelan women trapped in sex bondage in Haiti. I know this because I had a front row seat for the entire rescue. Working with Utah-based Operation Underground Railroad and the Maloof Foundation, Ambassador O'Brien coordinated with President Trump, Ivanka, and others to obtain humanitarian visas for these survivors, which represented their freedom. Just getting one can take years. Miraculously, he obtained all of them in weeks, stood down the United Nations, took down traffickers, cut through mountains of red tape, and got done in days what it might have taken other administrations years to accomplish. Now, Senator Lee, for his part, was among the very first to welcome these survivors to America for their very first moment of freedom in years. He didn't stay in his comfortable Capitol office. He came down to the street to welcome them in Spanish. He hugged them. He comforted them. He prayed with them and for them in Spanish. I know they loved the senator. Both men helped our support efforts to get these women to sanctuaries, get them jobs, education, and be reunited with their families in the United States. This is just one among many stories that I could tell about these two heroes. I thank Senator Lee for bringing Ambassador O'Brien here tonight to Utah, and I know that I speak for many leaders and citizens in expressing my appreciation and strong support of our senior senator. And now, for Ambassador O'Brien, Robert C. O'Brien is the chairman of American Global Strategies. He was the 28th United States National Security Advisor from 2019 to 21. He served as the President's principal advisor on all aspects of American foreign policy and national security affairs. During his time as National Security Advisor, the United States orchestrated the historic, but very poorly covered by the media, Abraham Accords in the Middle East. He brokered economic normalization between Serbia and Kosovo and achieved significant defense spending increases among our NATO allies. Prior to serving as NSA, he was the special presidential envoy for hostage affairs with the rank of ambassador. He was personally involved in the return of over 20 detainees and hostages back home to the United States of America. And previously, he served in distinguished positions under both Secretaries of State Rice and Clinton. Ambassador O'Brien achieved the rank of Major in the Judge Advocate General Corps of the U.S. Army Reserve. He was co-founding partner of a nationally recognized litigation firm. The Daily Journal named him one of the top 100 lawyers in California, and Law Dragon listed him as one of the top 500 lawyers in all of America. Among other awards, the ambassador is the recipient of the National Security Medal, the National Intelligence Distinguished Service Medal, the Department of Defense Medal for Distinguished Public Service, and the National Defense Medal. He holds a JD from the greatest law school outside of Utah, UC Berkeley School of Law. He received his BA degree in political science, cum laude, from UCLA, and resides with his wife and 2 daughters in Pasadena, California. I don't know where he keeps his superhero cape when he's doing speeches like this. He has always been such a great friend to me and to the state of Utah. Please join me in giving Ambassador O'Brien our warmest Utah welcome.
All right, well, that was a very nice introduction, Sean. Sean's an old friend. We're both minorities. We were Republicans at Bolt Hall Law School in Berkeley. I think there were 2 of us over a course of about 10 years, and so it's great to be here. And Sean's a great Attorney General. We relied on him when we were in the White House. He did tremendous work. He came and visited me in the West Wing, and I invited me to come out to Utah. We worked together on a number of key criminal justice issues, and you're lucky to have him here. So thank you for that kind introduction, Sean, and congratulations on all the successes, Utah's Attorney General. All right, so I probably wouldn't have agreed to speak if I knew I was going to follow Adam. There's kind of a rule in politics: you don't follow kids, and you don't follow, a performer, especially the Javert. That was just terrific. So thank you very much, and then we've got our state chair at the piano on the keyboard. That was pretty impressive, Derek. So thank you. I'm sure I should be quick so you can draft you guys to come back up here for an encore. We'll get our lighters out or our telephones, what the kids use now, and hold them up and get you guys back here for an encore. So thank you. Couple of quick introductions. My daughter Lauren's here with me. Lo Marie, my wife, sends her best. She loves Utah, but she's at home in California this weekend. And so Lauren, who just graduates from UVU and is going to be sworn in as a 2nd lieutenant in the U.S. Air Force next week, joined me tonight. So Lauren, thank you for coming. And my chief of staff, Alex Gray, and his beautiful wife, Rochelle, are here from my former chief of staff. He's now my business partner. But was a great chief of staff for the National Security Council. And he and Rochelle are here, and I know there are a lot of other great Americans out here in the audience. This is kind of nice for me to come from California. We're still kind of in lockdown, so I'm glad to see people aren't. Not sure. Move that back a little. Not participating in the lockdowns up here, and that we can get together with Republicans. So it's not sure if that's me. We'll give it another shot. But it's great to be here with all of you, and it's great to be here with Mike and Sharon, and Mike used to come to my office, regulate the West Wing. He was one of my closest advisors in Washington. He did a lot of great things for the president and the Senate. And Mike and I have been friends for a long time. In fact, a little known story, I tried to hire Mike at our law firm before he ran for Senate. He turned us down and ran for Senate instead. That was a much better deal for him and a much better deal for the people of Utah, but he's been a longtime friend. I actually think I figured out what happened, though. I think he was actually assigned to be my home teacher because I do the Sunday shows on Sunday and miss church most Sundays because I was out fighting with Chuck Todd or Margaret Brennan or that sort of thing, and Mike would always show up, and so I think there was probably a secret assignment there somewhere, but it was great to see his face. And then there were plenty of times I'd walk down to the Oval Office and to my surprise see Mike sitting with the president having a conversation about something, and so he was just great to have a good friend in Washington in some difficult times, but also some critical times where we got a lot done. I'm going to keep my remarks exceedingly short. I'll have a chance. I think most of you will be there tomorrow for the convention. It's always fun during election season. I know we've got candidates here. I wish everyone the best, and I think we've got candidates for the same office here, and everyone seems to be getting along pretty well, which is unlike Washington. So there's something in the water here in Utah that we can have tough political battles and yet maintain civility. And so we'll have some fun at the convention tomorrow. I'll speak at a little more length then. But I do want to mention a couple of things. Number one, the weather today was terrific. And I thought you had to pay 13.8% in state income tax to get weather like this. Apparently it only costs 4.9% here in Utah for a nice sunny day. So we'll probably spend. We have a little house down the road here. We'll probably spend a little bit more time up here. But let me tell you just a couple of quick things about the Trump administration. And folks ask what it was like, and Mike and I will spend some time talking about it. But it was an honor and a privilege every day to go through the gates of the White House and to serve the president and to serve the American people. I used to say a short prayer literally every morning before I left the apartment, just that I'd be able to help keep the country safe while I was working that day. And fortunately, we kept the country safe. And a friend of mine said, he goes, I can sum up what you did. You brought justice to terrorists, you brought Americans home, and you created peace in the Middle East. And we did a few more things than that, but it was a terrific record. And it was a record that belongs to the president. He's the one who gets the credit for it. It's not Jared or me or Mike Pompeo or others that worked on it. It was the president who, through his force of will and his commitment to keep putting America first, and unfortunately not like today, blaming America first, that led to these victories for the American people. So we did some great things and had a lot of fun along the way. But there were some tough times. Obviously, we had the COVID pandemic over the past year, and I want to think that if it wasn't for the pandemic, the president would have been reelected, and we would have done some more things. But one of the great things about America, and it especially it gives you a lot of hope coming up here to Utah, where we've got such a tremendous congressional delegation, 6 Republicans, 2 Republican senators, and 4 Republican House members. We can turn this thing around. We can turn it around in 2022. And the work that you're going to do tomorrow at the convention is going to be the first step on the path. And let's win these seats in Utah. Let's hold the seats in Utah. I know there'll be at least one tough congressional race. But then move out. Go to the it's kind of funny saying this because I couldn't say any of this sort of thing. I was a further restricted employee, and Alex would probably be giving me the no sign. I couldn't talk about this just a few months ago in the White House, but now I can tell you, go to the neighboring states, go around the country, do fundraisers, help our candidates, because look, we can take the Senate back. We're one Senate seat away from taking the Senate back. We're 6 seats away from taking the House back. So it starts here in Utah, and what you're going to do tomorrow is going to really get the ball rolling. But then it goes from here, it goes out across the country. We take the House back, we take the Senate back, and we can put an end to some of this nonsense. And then in 2024, we can get back to doing the business of the American people and protecting this country, standing up to China, standing up to Russia, standing up to Iran, bringing peace to the Middle East, bringing peace to the Balkans, confronting the challenges that we face in the Indo-Pacific. One of the, I'll end in this and then invite Mike to come up and we'll have a conversation. People often ask, what was the greatest national security risk we faced as Americans when you were in office? Certainly that's the rise of China. We have a very aggressive, very assertive China. Day to day, the most critical threat was Iran, the largest state sponsor of terrorism. and Iran continues to conduct themselves that way. But one of the things that surprised me, and it wouldn't be a surprise to Sean, it wouldn't be a surprise to some of the folks in law enforcement here, were the power of these transnational cartels, the criminal enterprises that operate all across our hemisphere but across the world. They control territory in places like Mexico and even Brazil. Alex and I went to Brazil just before the election to go see President Bolsonaro and talk about how we might help him on the COVID epidemic and how we might get him ventilators and do some things to support the people of Brazil. And President Bolsonaro said, we need DEA support, we need help standing up our police to fight a major cartel that was taking root in Brazil. They're bringing, there's not just sex trafficking, there's narcotics trafficking, there's slave labor trafficking, there's trafficking in antiquities and cultural property. It's flooding across our southern borders, which are now unfortunately open. So, we face tremendous threats as a country around the world, but we also are the United States of America. And what I tell people, even though we're going through a period of time when our team's not in power, never bet against the United States. We're going to get back in power, and the United States ultimately is going to prevail in the fights that we have for liberty, for freedom, for free men and women and free markets. And so it's an optimistic message, but it starts in 2022. And all of you, you're the activists, you're the base. The folks in this room are the ones who are doing everything to keep the party working and running and keeping Utah in the red column. So thank you all for what you do. God bless you all, and let's have Mike come on up. Let's sit down and talk about Washington. So.
Thanks so much for joining us, Robert. It was a fantastic address, and I always enjoy it whenever one group of friends gets to know another. You're somebody who I deeply enjoyed working with in Washington, and I'm proud to know you as a friend because you're such an interesting person and decent person. Every day you were at the White House, it just made me happy knowing that the president had access to your wisdom. I was wondering if you could share with this group a little bit about what it's like to be there. So the National Security Advisor is a pretty big deal. A National Security Advisor travels with the president everywhere he goes. Pretty much 24 hours a day, 365 days a year while you were in office. Either you or your deputy was with him, is that right?
Or Alex. Yeah,
or Alex. And as a result of that, you saw everything. Tell us a little bit about what it's like to move the president even a block outside the Oval Office. How does it work?
So I'll address that. The first thing I want to mention, though, about the president and spending so much time with him is his energy is unbelievable. So I'll give you just an example of one day, and then we'll talk about the movement. I'd get a call, and usually I'd know if there was, unfortunately as a National Security Advisor, you get calls day and night because anything that's going to go to the president gets screened by you. So if we lose a service member in Afghanistan or Iraq, or there's a potential for an attack, or there's some major event, the Situation Room would call. So I'd always, and I knew what the Situation Room, it was a block number, but I knew what it looked like when it came up on my phone. But then the White House operator would call, and the president always went through the White House operator. He didn't go through the Situation Room. So there was one morning, I think it was 6 in the morning, I was in bed, sleeping, the phone goes off, I look at it, and it's the White House operator. And I pick up the phone, and the operator's always incredibly cordial. And would say, Ambassador O'Brien, are you available to speak with the president? And of course, the answer was always yes. I was kind of wondering. I said, no, can you call back? I'm sleeping. I said,
not a good time for that.
No, so I said, yes, of course. I'm trying to wake up, and Lomer's looking at me and mouthing, is that the president? And the president immediately comes on, and I won't do my Donald Trump impression.
Oh, come on.
Somebody would have it on video here, and that would go viral, and I'd get a call from the president. But the president said, Robert, are you up? I said, yeah, I'm up, sir. I'm shaving. I'll be in the office in 5 minutes or something. He said, no, you're not. You're still in bed. I said, well, and he goes, are you watching Fox and Friends? I said, no, I'm turning it on right now. I'm fumbling for the remote. And this was classic. The president said, there's a family on, and I think in this case it was a daughter. Their daughter's being held somewhere. You need to get them home today. And I always appreciate the confidence that the president had because of my time as a hostage envoy that we had some success in bringing people home, but usually it took longer than a day. He said, and call the family and tell them that I'm watching it, and tell them I told you to get this lady home and get it done. I said, okay, sir. I'll so I get on. I think so. things flow downhill in Washington. So I think I picked up the phone and called Alex and woke him up, and passed on the same message to him, and then he picked up the phone and called somebody else, and it, we got the ball rolling and got it working. So we had a long day at the White House, and the president would then sometimes in the evening fly somewhere for a rally. So I think we flew on Air Force One, went out to the South Lawn, which was always a privilege, and got on Marine One, and flew out to Joint Base Andrews, and got on Air Force One, and we flew down to Florida, and landed I think in West Palm, and then we took another helicopter, and they move helicopters ahead, so there are a number of Marine Ones and a couple of Air Force Ones. Any plane the president's on is Air Force One, is call sign Air Force One. We got another helicopter, flew to a rally, I think it was Jacksonville, and the president goes out, and you saw his rallies. I mean, it was, probably nothing more entertaining in a stadium if it was someone who didn't have a guitar hung around their neck than the president doing a rally. And so he's up for, an hour and 45 minutes doing this rally, and the people are going nuts, and the president's always funny and witty in those. But remember, I'd woken up at 6. He'd woke me up at about 6 in the morning. He'd probably already been up for an hour. I'm falling asleep against a steel girder in the hallway. Waiting when he comes down, and he comes off the podium, and this is by now it's midnight. And it's all fired up. He's like, "Hey, wasn't that a great speech? Great rally?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir, yes, sir." I'm ready to fall asleep, and the president, who's 74 years old, had been up, being president all day, and had just done a 2-hour rally speech, and we hopped on the helicopter and flew back, and on the helicopter he's looking around and going, "Isn't this great? Isn't this a great helicopter? This is fantastic." He enjoyed the job every day, and so that just gives you just a taste of his energy. Mike's sitting there thinking, never ask an open-ended question to another lawyer, I used to do this if some of you watch the Sunday shows. I used to talk in the Sunday shows. Margaret Brennan, unfortunately, and I like Margaret a lot, but she usually got the worst of it because she was polite. So she'd ask one question, and the 15-minute segment would be over with me extolling the virtues of the administration and what we were doing, and then I'd get done, and she wouldn't have gotten a second question. So I remember the first time I went on Chris Wallace, he pulled me aside ahead of time, and he goes, "Ambassador, I know you're a lawyer, and I know you like giving long answers, but I've got like 8 questions, and I'm going to ask them all. And I'm going to cut you off and ask the question, so you better give short answers." And so I didn't have that conversation with Mike before then. But real quickly on your question about the movements, the logistics, the U.S. Secret Service is just amazing. I was fortunate enough and still am for some period of time to have to be a protectee of the U.S. Secret Service. These are just amazing men and women who are willing to risk their lives for the president, the vice president, and the others that they protect. And the operation that they run to move the president anywhere, even if it's to go to a fundraiser in Washington or to give a speech in Washington, with the president's limousine, with the lead car, with the car behind the president, with the hazmat units, with the counter-assault team, with the White House staff. It's a massive, the White House physician, the chief of staff, the national security advisor, who are in one car called the control car, where we've got two phones in the car, 2 secure phones, one for the chief and one for myself, or our deputies. The logistics that the Secret Service, and then beyond the Secret Service, that the military does anytime we're moving outside of the national capital area, and the president has to board Marine One and go to Andrews and then get on Air Force One. The logistics that are involved are amazing, because what happens when we arrive somewhere, wherever we arrive, the motorcade's duplicated, and the number of people there, and the facilities, and the support for the president is all there waiting for him. So it's something that's it's hard to explain unless you see it, but it's a tremendous thing that between the Secret Service and the military, it's really phenomenal how they move and keep the president safe and move him around.
I remember one time, one Saturday evening, you and I and Sharon and your wife Lomari decided to watch The Hunt for Red October. And about 10 minutes into the show, we realized it was about the National Security Advisor. So from then on, every conversation was about the fact that this movie was about Robert and his job. It makes it much more interesting that way. So one of the great things that you brought...
That was at Camp David. So it is fun to watch a movie up at Camp David. So we had the president was very fond of Senator Lee, and so we thought we'd go to Camp David maybe one last time, and that's the president's personal retreat, and he can designate who can go. And so I made it very easy because I went to the chief of staff, who kind of runs it, Mark Meadows, and I said, no, we want to head up to Camp David, and I said to take the Lees, and the senator, he goes, oh, Meadows is a good friend of both Mike's, the senators of mine, and he just looked at me, he's like, okay, what are you and Mike up to? And so he went to the president and said, the O'Briens want to take the Lees up to Camp David, and the president said, okay. So we went up and had a great weekend in Camp David, but they've got a movie theater there, and it was nice to watch. Sean Connery had just passed away, so we decided to watch The Hunt for Red October in his honor. It was either that or a Bond movie, and it was pretty. That was a fun night.
It was really cool, and that's when I got to cross-examine Robert about exactly what that submarine consisted of. But anyway, I digress. One of the things that I loved about having you in that job is that you brought with it expertise that you had acquired throughout an entire career as a lawyer and throughout your previous service as the hostage envoy, as our country's lead hostage situation negotiator. That is really cool. When he first got that job, I remember sitting down. You had been in this job for a while. When you sat down with me and Senator Romney to talk to us about what had happened with some missionaries who had been imprisoned in Russia, he had these great stories about the fact that, in some ways they had never lived in nicer accommodations than this relatively new prison. But
that is true. They were stuck there, and I spoke with with one of our friends at church headquarters, and they said, well, here's the thing. The mission president went and, or the consular officer, I think he was a member of the church, went and the LDS church, went and visited them at a detention facility, and they were not being held in a prison. They were being held in like a immigration detention facility, and apparently it was brand new. And the consular officer told Ambassador Huntsman and told the church's general counsel, don't worry, the facility is much nicer than their missionary apartment, which I've seen, and the food is better than they're eating. So, they're probably not in a big hurry to get out and go back. So that was, only missionary parents would understand that comment, or people that have served missions. But that is true.
Within the confines of what you're allowed to tell us, and that wouldn't require you to kill us thereafter, tell us the craziest thing you've dealt with as the hostage envoy negotiator and how that helped you as National Security Advisor.
So, what most people, when I meet people overseas and often see people that don't follow politics, they don't really focus on the fact that I was National Security Advisor. Kissinger's job, Scowcroft's job, Condi's job. They focused on one case, and that was ASAP Rocky. And I don't know if many people, my daughter knows who ASAP Rocky is. She's laughing. My kids had no respect for me with the hostage job. I could get somebody out of Yemen that's being held by a terrorist organization, but there's a rapper, an American rapper named ASAP Rocky, who was arrested in Sweden back in the summer of 2019. And it was we felt very strongly, and I think it turned out to be true, that it was a wrongful arrest. But he and his entourage had been attacked by a couple of migrants to Sweden, and for a bunch of reasons, it was not a good idea because attacking a rapper and their entourage, usually doesn't end well, and it didn't end well for the two attackers, and so they lost out on the fight, and ASAP and two of his colleagues were arrested. The president took a personal interest in it, and as always happened when I was a hostage envoy, I worked in Mike and I saw more of each other then than probably ever because my wife stayed home in California. I would fly home for the weekends to California, so I kind of had a little bit of a schedule like a senator or a congressman. And every time I flew home to California, something always broke on Saturday, and I'd have to fly somewhere. So I'd get home on a 5-hour flight. It broke. Pompeo called me in the morning, on Saturday morning, and said, I just left the Oval. You need to get on a flight to Sweden today or tomorrow, and you've got to get ASAP Rocky out by no later than the end of next week. And it's Sweden, right? So it's not like it's Yemen or Lebanon or something. I thought, okay. So we went to Sweden. I had some very frank conversations with my friends in the foreign ministry in Sweden. None of the senior political leaders wanted to see me. But I told them, look, ASAP Rocky's coming home with me on Friday. I'm going to stay here through Friday. He's coming home on Friday. They said, no, he's not. I said, the trial's going to end on Friday, and he's coming home with me. And the U.S., I won't get into the details, but we do have a fair number of tools at our disposal, and there's a lot of furniture sold through IKEA and Volvo, cars who are sold here. And not saying that had anything to do with it, but I made it very clear that the president believed he'd had a deal with the Swedes that Rocky would be able to come home, and he felt that it had been reneged on, and the president didn't take kindly to that situation. So once he put his credibility on the line, the credibility of the president of the United States, it actually became a very serious issue, because we had other wrongful detainees and hostages in places like Iran and Syria, all over the world, and it couldn't look like we were going to not follow through when we made a commitment to bring someone home. So fortunately, by that Friday, ASAP was convicted. He was given time served, and was allowed to leave that Friday night. And so it was a great night. So I'm leaving the courtroom, and the Swedes, by the way, the hospitality was terrific. It wasn't like any other normal hostage situation where you're in some Middle Eastern country and concerned. I mean, the Swedes couldn't have been nicer. And so I went down and called the president. And this, the classic President Trump, and you can look up the tweet. I don't know if you can get old tweets on Twitter, if those have been taken off as part of the censorship by Jack Dorsey. But he said, that's great, he's out. He goes, okay, how about this tweet, Robert? And he said, it's been a rocky week, Rocky. Come home ASAP. and people are laughing. I mean, obviously he's in the Oval, and this is, I didn't know the president as well then. The only time I'd seen him was when we brought hostages home, where I had to brief him on something, and I'm kind of on the phone, and I said, sure, that sounds great. so as I said, he goes, boom, ding, so the tweet goes, viral, and I went out and did a press conference, and we got ASAP home. So. That's the guy who got ASAP out will be on my tombstone someday. But
it was fantastic. The best part about that is, it could have gone much worse had he decided to work in a Greta Thunberg tweet with it. Would have gotten much more complicated.
But we got him home, which was good. And he's a very nice guy, very intelligent guy. And I had a chance to meet with him a couple times in jail in Sweden, and. He still had to tell, the funny thing is, I thought I was going to be kind of persona non grata in the hotel and on the streets, and I had to go to Office Depot and buy some stuff, and this is before I had the Secret Service detail and some of the way you get moved around, so I still had some freedom to kind of walk around. And people knew it's the most press I've ever seen, including when I was at the White House with the president on the campaign. I think there were 250 journalists accredited to the trial. And it was a big deal in Europe, and no one would talk to him. There was nothing for him to do other than cover my comings and goings to the courthouse. And so I was on the front page of the papers every day in Sweden, and I thought people would be very angry at me as this American coming to tell them their justice system was wasn't working properly, and to demand that our American citizen comes home. But ASAP was so popular, especially with young people. It was getting thumbs up, and we love ASAP, and so it was quite a week. But
one of my favorite memories, I always enjoyed going over to your office while you were in the White House. It was always fascinating. I always had to remember Alex was usually there to greet me and tell me how things are going that day. Alex would remind me to disarm all my transmitting devices. Robert's office was a SCIF. It's a classified facility. I think there was only once when I forgot to drop my phone off, and I was afraid I was going to be summarily executed for doing that. Fortunately, Alex and you both went easy on me. But one of my favorite memories in that office was there was an occasion when Elder Garrett Gong of the Quorum of the 12 of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, our shared faith, was in town. It was kind of at the beginning of COVID. And he had a lot of questions about, different parts of the world. Recognizing this was, I think, at the beginning of what people were realizing could become a global pandemic. Elder Gong and Sister Gong were facing us. You and I were on the same side of the room, and you had a map behind Elder Gong on the wall. Elder Gong started asking you questions about different parts of the world, security threats as they might evolve. And we understood that he was asking questions. Elder Gong has an incredible, vast knowledge, one of the smartest human beings I've ever met. of world geography, world affairs, and I watched your eyes walk around the globe and walk him through each region. What can you tell us about your memories about that meeting?
So Elder Gong, as most of you probably know, served in a very senior position at the State Department. I think I can't remember if it was under H.W. Bush or under
Reagan.
Was it Reagan? And so he's an incredibly sophisticated guy when it comes to international politics and diplomacy, and is one of the most, the genuinely nicest men you'll ever meet. I mean, he's just a very sweet guy.
I stand corrected. It was Reagan and H.W.
Yeah. Wonderful man. And I met with him, but and I didn't do that just because he was a co-religionist, but I met with Franklin Graham on Samaritan's Purse. Any organization I met with. I went to the Vatican several times and met with Bishop Gallagher, the Vatican foreign minister, and senior officials there. Anytime there was an international organization that had Americans or that had interests that were similar to ours abroad, we'd have those meetings and try and help out. But this was, obviously something that was a concern to Elder Gong and to the Quorum of the 12, because we have 50-some thousand missionaries serving around the world, probably at least half of them outside of Oconus, so we'd all outside the continental U.S. And one of the thoughts was we had countries shutting down in a very patchwork fashion, and travel shutting down, and airlines stopping service in a very kind of ununiform manner as countries came to grips and started to grapple with the pandemic. And Elder Gong was concerned, as were his colleagues, about how that would affect their church members, our brothers and sisters worldwide, but also how it would affect the missionaries, and especially those missionaries that had been sent to those countries from the United States, from other countries. And so it was a privilege to give him a briefing to talk about what was happening. What was very interesting is the manner in which the church responded, and the church is well known for its organization, its ability to move quickly and to organize pretty massive operations. The church chartered planes and took care of everything without really much further assistance. I mean, there were chartered Delta flights, going all over the world to pick up missionaries. I kind of, Mike Pompeo and I used to joke at the beginning of COVID that we were travel agents, because literally every day we'd get a call from half a dozen congressmen. If they didn't get a hold of me, they got a hold of Secretary Pompeo, and it was always about constituents or religious groups or tour groups that were stuck in Morocco or stuck in Peru or stuck somewhere, and how was the U.S. government going to get them out? And we mobilized in a dramatic fashion to get folks out from around the world. Sometimes when I say we, it was really Alex and the people who worked for me who did it, but I'll take credit for it. But it was very hard, and we never had to have that. That never happened with the LDS Church. The only thing we would hear is the Elder Gong or Elder Rasband or one of the other folks of the church, maybe Bill Atkins in the legal department, would call up and say, "We just brought home 4,000 missionaries from Africa. We did this, we did that," kind of reporting back to us on what was happening. And we'd say, "Well, thank you, that's terrific." But we really never had a request to use U.S. government resources. The church, once they understood the scope of the problem, understood what had to be done, they mobilized and got folks home. And it was truly impressive to watch it, not just as a member of the church, but as in my position to see what Salt Lake did to take care of the missionaries. There were a couple of other groups that did some amazing things. Franklin Graham's Samaritan Purse did some really amazing things during COVID. So other churches did as well. But everyone here who's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints can be proud of how the church quickly reacted and reacted in such a professional manner to the onset of the pandemic.
There was one time when there was a situation, for confidentiality reasons, we won't get into what it involved or even what part of the world, because it's still a sensitive issue. But there was an issue that came up. There was a person in dire need, and some things had to be done in order to help get that person out of a situation. I called you. It was midnight. And by, 6 or 8 a.m., I got an email from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff then called me about 2 hours later to tell me that he had completely solved the situation. And I thought at that moment, God bless Robert O'Brien and Alex Gray, because I knew you had worked your magic. So thank you on behalf of a grateful nation for all that you did.
No, in that situation, it was someone who's trapped overseas, and oftentimes, and this is the difference between the Trump administration and some people would criticize. In fact, I've heard reporters criticize us for rescuing hostages, which is just amazing. Usually, if things don't happen very quickly in the first 24, 48 hours, you may not ever be able to recover the person, or it could take years before you recover them, because they go into a kind of down a rabbit hole of terrorist organizations that know how to keep hostages secure, and they stay off the phone lines, and they take all the operational security measures necessary to avoid detection. And the great thing about President Trump is, if you brought one of these situations to his attention, he would always move incredibly quickly and say, get it taken care of. And in that case, Mark Milley, was a special operations officer, and is now the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. When I called and explained the situation to him, without mobilizing, the entire bureaucracy and that sort of thing, he called a unit that happened to be in that country, told him what was going on, and a relatively small group of U.S. Special Forces took care of the situation decisively and quickly, and we got it resolved. And I think that was the difference between, in many ways, with many things that we did between the Trump administration and prior administrations, both Republican and Democrat, that it was cutting through some of the red tape to get things done if an American was in danger. And the president's always, his initial reaction whenever we took one of these situations to him, whether it was our soldiers might be threatened, or an embassy might be under siege, or he was just not going to have a Benghazi on his watch. He was not going to have an American mistreated or harmed or kidnapped on his watch if there was anything he could do about it. And so we had carte blanche, and that was an example. And really, it was Mark Milley who did Chairman Milley, who did a great job on that front and got the situation taken care of quickly.
So on a looking forward front, there's nobody who's more familiar with our geopolitical realities and our military challenges than you are. You wrote a book a few years ago called "While America Slept," talking.
And by the way, that put the readers to sleep as well. So if you have an insomnia issue, you can still get a used copy on Amazon. So it'll help you. America was sleeping. It'll help you.
Bruce
get
Huff
to
has a
sleep as
copy
well.
right here, and it's well worn and tabbed and now autographed. So Derek's given me the signal that he's about to pull the lever into the crocodile pit. But if I can just ask this one more question.
You can do the music; it'll be like the Oscars.
Yes, yes, exactly.
You can just, put a pianist right off the stage. Here, so.
As every state Republican Party chair can play like he can. We've got in Washington right now, and this was the case as of a few months ago when you left your previous position, but even more right now, if you want to make people in Washington panic, you utter the words Taiwan and Ukraine in the same sentence, and you'll see members of Congress of both political parties and of both houses start to panic. And it's not just Ukraine and Taiwan and China and Russia, and also the threats that we face from south of our own border. We face a lot of different challenges, and yet we do that at the same time when we're being stretched thin because of a global pandemic. Do you have any thoughts on how moving forward we can prioritize what we do? And if you were Commander-in-Chief at the moment, where do you think we should best prioritize ourselves for our national defense strategy moving forward?
Look, the answer to that is very easy, and it came from Ronald Reagan, and Ronald Reagan got it from the Romans, and President Trump believed in it and spoke about it often. It's peace through strength. We deter our adversaries by being strong. And when President Trump took office, the military was in terrible shape because it had just gone through 8 years of something called defense sequestration, where I'd like to say the military was decimated, but it was actually more than a 10% cut in the military. Our readiness was terrible. Our ships couldn't get out to sea. Our airplanes couldn't. Our jets couldn't fly. Our refuelers couldn't fly. because for lack of parts, we didn't have enough missiles, we didn't have ammunition in the ammo dumps to sustain us if we got into a conflict. And so we spent 4 years in the Trump administration rebuilding the American military. And what deters our adversaries? What keeps the Chinese from making that decision? You want to complicate the lives of the planners on the other side. And so if PLA Navy or PLA Army officers are thinking about invading Taiwan, or Russian officers are thinking about expanding their footprint in the frozen conflict in Ukraine, they have to think what would the United States do and what could the United States do? And we need to be so strong, and this is something that we've been in this shape really until the massive defense cuts that came under Obama since Ronald Reagan. The planners on the other side would look at it and say that it's not worth it. It isn't worth the risk, because if the United States deploys and takes action against us, they'll defeat us. And in an authoritarian government, if you're defeated in a war, you're not going to last very long in your position. We saw that in the Falklands with the junta in Argentina after they lost the Falklands War. It was curtains for them. That's what happens in authoritarian regimes. And so regime survival is so important to them that if they think there's a chance they would lose a conflict or that the U.S. would decisively intervene, that will deter them, for the most part, from taking action. And so we need to make sure that we continue to properly fund our military. We need to make sure that our war fighters have the very best platforms and equipment and tanks, missiles, planes, ships to defend this country and our allies, but most importantly, to deter our foes. I like to say weakness is provocative. And what concerns me today, in many ways, the Biden administration is carrying on the Trump legacy. And imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And so what we see happening in Asia Pacific and the Indo-Pacific, what we see happening with Russia with sanctions and that sort of thing, is a continuation of the policies, with the exception of Iran, where I think we're going to make a big mistake by appeasing the mullahs again. But otherwise, they're for the most part following the footsteps and the path that we created. The problem, though, is that there's an appearance of weakness. And so when our adversaries believe that we're in decline, believe that we're weak, even if we're not, there's a potential for miscalculation. And so it's very provocative. So when we're constantly engaged in the self-criticism and blame America first, whether it's domestically or foreign in foreign affairs, that to our adversaries, that looks like a weak, divided America. And it might encourage them to make a move in Ukraine, in Belarus, in Taiwan, in the South China Sea, that would be a miscalculation and lead to war. And that's the thing that concerns me the most.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking our friend, Robert O'Brien.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Thank you. Take your lunch? Absolutely. Thank you very much.